This is the case where the young lady with the child involved has some special needs, and we're going to allow her to bring in an electronic device to keep her occupied. So, I believe here today on motions that had originally been set and were reset, but they include Ms. Jackson Smith's motion for cassette mediation, a motion to compel discovery, and a motion to modify the temporary spousal support order. Are those the motions before the court?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
All right. I will hear you. If you want to make any sort of opening statement before we begin the proof, then I'll be glad to hear it.
I don't believe that'll be necessary, Your Honor.
You may call your first witness.
Your Honor, I'll call my client, Mr. Brett Anderson.
Okay. And Mr. Anderson, you are currently involved in a divorce from your wife, Ms. Pamela Query Anderson, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on July the 9th of 2021, an agreed pendente light spousal support order was signed by both you and your wife, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in that order, you were ordered to pay to your wife $1,200 a month to be paid in $600 installments twice a month by noon on the 1st and 15th of every month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you also ordered to continue to maintain the marital bills as had previously been paid?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you specifically ordered to continue to maintain the mortgage, which includes insurance and taxes, vehicles, health insurance, car insurance, Netflix, Comcast, cable and internet, phone bills, and other incidental bills that you had paid throughout the marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then your wife was ordered to continue to pay the other utilities at the residence, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So other than the utilities that were being paid for at the house by your wife, was she paying for anything to maintain the household, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no, ma'am.
And I have a breakdown. You're currently paying a mortgage for the residence that your wife is living in the amount of $743.89 a month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And a car loan, whose car loan is that?
It's under my name, but it's for Pamela.
So it's for your wife's vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's $333.24 a month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You also pay $105.81 for internet and Netflix and all that, correct?
It's $105 for the internet through Comcast. There's an extra $15.96 for Netflix.
Okay.
$15.96.
And the $1,200 a month you pay in spousal support, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I have that monthly total at somewhere around $2,400. Does that sound about right?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Okay. And we have calculated spousal support and monthly bills to be approximately $60,000 you've paid your wife since July of 2021. Does that sound correct?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Now, how have the responsibilities of these, I think it's fair to say, large monthly payments, what effect has that had on you, your well-being?
I've had to work a lot, 2 jobs. It's tiring and a lot of pressure. It's difficult. There were days where I'd only eat like 1 meal. It's been hard.
Okay. Is this a circumstance that you feel like you can continue to live in?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to have to ask my client some questions about his psychological well-being that I'm fairly certain would be inappropriate for a child, certainly not his child to hear. I understand Ms. Duke's position, but I also think that it's my duty to inform the court.
She can't be left by her. She's never been left by herself.
Exactly how to proceed in that situation where the child, you don't want the child to be present during his testimony regarding the psychological. The only other way we do that would be to have a set of noise filtering headset for the child to wear during the testimony. So
And again, Your Honor, I had no idea that these were going to be the circumstances or that would be my responsibility.
Responsibility, and we're simply saying, if you're going to ask your client some questions that you feel like would be inappropriate for the child, Ms. Duke?
Without being ugly, Mr. Anderson has never assisted with this child. The child is highly autistic. I mean, we've got Miss Lucy Potter here who could sit with her, but she has escalations, and that's the reason she goes everywhere with the mother, because she has to calm her down. They've already had one escalation from having to be here today. We're in a catch-22. I do think the child is aware of his mental health because he had one of his episodes in front of the child.
Which, again, Your Honor, I don't believe makes her hearing this testimony any more palatable.
Here we are in a situation where really don't have a lot of good options. In this particular case, you're asking to remove a child from the courthouse or from the courtroom that I have previously granted permission both in this hearing and another hearing because of her situation and her condition to allow her to be with her mother, because apparently that is a requirement of her condition that she be with her mother at all times. So your options are that we can pass your case and someone can find some headphones for this child that would eliminate the sound, or if that is not possible, then we will go the other route and see what we can do. Are you looking for headphones that would be compatible with what?
It has a jack like the new iPhone battery, the new iPhone.
It's an Android, sir. It's a Samsung.
Well, I have 3 sets, but none of them are. We have a converter. That might work.
All right, we'll suspend this hearing and come back after lunch and give you an opportunity to see what you can find out.
Ask about stipulations. I think we will be done, but I do need to let the court know that my daughter has a soccer game this afternoon and it's kickoff of the season, so I don't want to miss it. It starts at 6.
Starts at when?
6.
Having been in your shoes, I trust you, you will be out of here before 6 no matter what. So.
Thank
But having been in your shoes for several of my children having to make soccer games, I can relate. So. Rule has been requested. Anyone who's going to testify as a witness must go outside of the courtroom and remain outside of the courtroom until you are called to testify. You're not to discuss the testimony of any other witness with anyone until after you yourself have testified.
For the purposes of the record, Your Honor, I'd just like to state that the minor child is still present in the courtroom, but does have what appear to be noise-canceling headphones.
All right, the record reflects that the minor child is here because of her autism, that the court has allowed her to remain in the courtroom near her mother so that there will not be any sort of problems. And she has now been outfitted with some headphones that prevent her from being able to hear testimony, so you may proceed. What about the question of Mr. Anderson about his own psychological problem?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. So, Mr. Anderson, to go back a little bit and set the tempo again, you said that there were some days that you only ate 1 meal a day, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Why were you only eating 1 meal a day?
It's just what I could afford.
So, would it be fair to say that the stress of these proceedings and the burden of the spousal support that you have been ordered to pay?
I've let it go on for purposes of objection, but I've let it go on for purposes of getting through the hearing, but she is leading and telling him what his feelings are at this point, so I do have to cut off the leading.
Staying, don't lead the witness.
Has the process of this divorce been very stressful for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Has being able to meet the requirements of the court-ordered spousal support been very difficult for you?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, she's still leading. Her questions are suggestive of an answer.
Overall, on that question in particular, it may be somewhat, but I don't think it is a yes or no question, but it's not suggestive of the answers overall.
Has it been challenging for you to also maintain the payment of the household bills that you were ordered to pay?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that you will be able to continue to shoulder those burdens?
No, ma'am.
So recently you were hospitalized, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
There have been 2 hospitalizations in the last year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How far apart were those hospitalizations?
A month and a half.
And Mr. Anderson, you're speaking with an accent. Where are you from?
I'm from Australia.
Okay, and do you have any friends or family here in the area?
Where?
Australia.
I've got friends, yes.
Do you have any family that lives here?
Just my daughter.
Does your wife have any family that lives here?
Yes.
Okay, does she have extended family that lives here?
Yes.
So would you say, other than your daughter, you're pretty much alone?
Yes, ma'am.
So what necessitated the first hospitalization?
I was working 100+ hours. I had trouble with employees at my second job. Some would show up and for maybe a day or two and then not come in, and I would have to work their hours. Some were being problem employees, and I had to try and take care of it. I had to ask for employees not to come in because they were being problems, and that necessitated me being the one to take their hours. A $1,200 tax bill, a $1,000 car repair bill, another $500 car repair bill, possibly a $1,000 mediation hearing bill. There was just a bunch of stuff that happened within a very short amount of time that I couldn't handle.
Okay, these car repair bills, what were they for?
The transmission mounts on the gearbox of my car are missing or broken, and they need to be replaced. And the other one is my car doesn't have a rear bumper now. It broke off, and so I have to get that repaired.
Have you been able to afford to do that?
I was in the process of being able to. Most of the money that I had from working all those extra hours, being forced to work all those extra hours, I was doing everything I can to not overspend, not spend very much money, and try to save that up so I could try to get at least the transmission mounts repaired. But I didn't get to that point.
And so at some point you made the decision to take your own life, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened, if you don't mind us asking?
Overdosed on sleeping pills.
And when that happened, were you in the care of any professionals?
No, ma'am. I was at home by myself.
Did you already have a counselor?
No, ma'am. I was planning on trying to go see my counselor again, and the only way I can explain it is I just ran out of time, I guess.
So if you could tell us what factors weighed most in your decision to end your life?
Nobody else was trying to help take responsibility. It's always been left up to me.
You say it's always been left up to you. Has your wife ever been employed during your relationship with her?
No, ma'am.
Has she had, in your opinion, has she had the ability to be employed?
Yes, ma'am.
And why do you have that opinion?
She has never had any medical issues. In 2019, she made the decision to start with Nashville State and try to get her teaching degree. A year and a half later, she decided to give it up and not continue on to her bachelor's degree. And then after that, her mom and dad came to stay with us until they died in 2021. And her excuse was she was taking care of them. And then after that, she just refused.
So when you made the first attempt on your life, were you hospitalized?
No.
What happened?
The first attempt, I tried to cut my wrist.
And why did you make that decision?
I got evicted from my house by the court. Everything that I had worked for since coming to the US in 2006 had been ripped away from me. I worked hard. I worked diligently, and that didn't matter. None of that mattered. After I worked for Shoney's and was let go, I went back to school to re-educate myself and try to make a better life for us, to get a better job. None of that meant anything to anybody. I don't mean to play victim, but as immigrants, we're told that if we work hard, things will be good for us, that we'll get what we owed. All of our hard work would pay off, and that didn't matter. And it felt like my life had been ripped away from me. All of that meant nothing, and I didn't want to continue living like a slave. And that's why I tried first time.
So When you made the first attempt on your life, you were employed at 2 different full-time jobs, part-time jobs,
One full-time and what was supposed to be a part-time job.
and you said you were working 100 hours a week. Was that an average, or
Yes.
in your opinion, was that a tempo that you could keep up?
No, ma'am, I tried, but
Okay.
couldn't.
So, in addition to what you're paying your wife, $1,200 plus all of her monthly expenses except for utilities. In addition to that, you have your own monthly expenses, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you, the court did grant her exclusive possession of the marital residence, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So since that time, you've had to not only support her entire household, but also your own, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and at some point, you lost that part-time job, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that reduced your monthly income from approximately $9,000 to approximately $6,000 a month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. Your Honor, may I approach?
Right.
I'm passing you a 2-page document, Mr. Anderson. In the upper left-hand corner is labeled Gresham Smith, and in the upper left-hand corner it says paycheck deposit advice. Do you recognize that 2-page document?
Yes, ma'm.
Is that your most current pay stub?
Yes, ma'am.
And that reflects a monthly payment of how much?
$1,880.51.
And is that bi-weekly?
Twice a month, yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, that's supposed to be at this point.
All right.
No objection.
Exhibit 1.
And Mr. Anderson, to be clear, that paycheck represents your entire income, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we have submitted an income and expense statement that you signed off on that was filed this week. Do you remember signing off on that?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember that it had a net income less expenses total of negative $2,483.67?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that sound correct to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Anderson, is there any reason in your opinion that your wife cannot contribute to her own upkeep?
No, ma'am.
Are you able to continue to perpetuate the upkeep that the court has currently ordered?
No, ma'am.
What can you afford?
Approximately half of what I'm doing now.
Okay, and you think that half would be something that you would be able to sustain?
Yes, ma'am.
And be able to sustain and also maintain your mental and physical health?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, half of what you're currently paying.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, that's all I have at this time. Mr. Anderson, if you will stay put, I'm sure Ms. Duke has some questions for you.
Mr. Anderson, when the court previously heard this matter on a pending-like basis, temporary basis, you were employed at just Gresham Smith, correct?
No, ma'am.
Where else were you employed at that time?
I was employed by Securitas.
Okay, you had just started working for them, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay, how long had you been with Securitas?
About 2 years.
Okay, how long were you with Gresham Smith at that time?
6 years.
Okay, so you'd worked for both for over 2 years. So if Ms. Anderson testifies otherwise, that would be incorrect. In 2021, when this was first heard, were you working for Securitas?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Now, between our last hearing date and today's date, you've taken multiple trips, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you've not traveled to Chicago to see your girlfriend?
No, ma'am.
Okay, did you make a trip to Chicago?
I did.
Okay, and who were you visiting up there?
I met a friend up there for dinner.
Okay, was it a female?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and you remember admitting the last time that we were in court that that was a girlfriend? That was someone you had a romantic involvement with?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And since the last time we were in court, you went to Tampa, is that correct? Tampa, Florida.
No, ma'am.
Have you traveled to Florida?
I traveled to Pensacola
And how long did you stay in Pensacola?
one night.
And what was the reason for your travel?
It was for my birthday,
Okay, so you treated yourself. When was that?
February 1st. The weekend after February 1st.
Of 2023?
Yes.
Okay. Since this divorce has been pending, has Ms. Anderson been able to take a trip?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Aside from camp for your daughter, has she taken a trip?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell me where.
She went to Pensacola, Florida.
Okay, when was that?
That was Christmas 2022.
Okay. Did she go with someone that paid for her to go?
I'm not sure.
You've been to New Orleans, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell me how long that trip was.
That was the weekend after my birthday.
Okay, so you went from Pensacola to New Orleans.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and for how long were you there?
It was from the Thursday through to the Sunday, so it was a 4-day trip.
Okay, and you were there with a girlfriend.
I was there with a friend, yes, ma'am.
Okay, who was a female, correct?
Yes,
And you paid for the trip.
I did.
And that was when?
That was the weekend after my birthday, February 1st.
Okay, so in March of 2023, you're still making enough money to handle additional trips outside of the state of Tennessee, correct? Expense-wise.
I was making money from 2 jobs, yes, ma'am.
And you've taken trips to Niagara Falls, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, was that with a girlfriend also?
No, ma'am.
Okay, was that with a friend that was of female persuasion?
Yes,
Okay. And you paid for that trip, correct?
I did.
Okay. And during the pendency of this case, you've had meal delivery services, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've utilized those up until you filed this motion, is that correct?
Yes.
And how much is that meal delivery service you use?
I don't know.
Okay, has Ms. Anderson been able to utilize a meal delivery service?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you understand that she's spending as much money on food for she and your daughter that you say on your expenses you're spending on yourself?
I'm not sure.
Judge, may I approach? On your statement of income and expenses, sir, how much does it list for your food?
$802.
Judge, if I may grab that back. You're spending $802 per month on your food for you by yourself.
Yes, ma'am, approximately.
And that does not include your meal delivery service, does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And you had a membership in Don't Eat, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where was that?
It was at a gym.
Okay, how much was that for every month?
It's $380.
And has Ms. Anderson been able to avail herself and avail your daughter of going to a private gym?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, do you know her to travel to gyms?
I don't know.
And you said that was 300 and what?
$80.
Still paying that, sir?
No, ma'am.
When did you stop paying that?
March.
After you got back from New Orleans?
Yes,
And you've got a YMCA expense, is that correct?
I do.
How much is that per month?
$44.
And you've got a Netflix expense, is that correct?
It's a joint Netflix expense.
Okay, is that something that Ms. Anderson's able to utilize?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay, do you have any problem with her utilizing that expense?
No.
Now, earlier you said that Ms. Anderson hadn't had any health issues, but she has, hasn't she? She was treated for cancer?
I can't remember.
Okay, you don't remember whether or not your wife went through cancer treatments?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Do you recall whether or not she's ever had any hospitalizations due to cancer?
I remember a hospitalization in 2013.
And are you aware that your wife has got $5,000 in medical bills that she's working on paying?
No, I'm not.
When you said she attended Nashville State trying to get a teaching degree, she stopped doing that when she found out that you had been cheating on her, correct?
I don't remember.
Okay. And her parents were gravely ill and they moved in with you. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. So all about the same time she finds out you're cheating on her and her parents are moving in because they're gravely ill, correct?
I don't remember why
And her parents subsequently passed away. Is that correct?
they did.
Okay. You said she had family here, extended family here.
Yes,
How
ma'am.
many extended family members does she have in this area? She has one aunt. Is that correct?
No, ma'am.
Who else does she have here?
She also has her cousin, 3 cousins. She has her 2 sisters as well.
Are those people that she can rely on to assist with caregiving for your daughter?
I don't know.
Has anyone ever, other than your wife, ever provided care for your minor child?
Not when we were together, no.
And she was a homemaker the entire marriage, is that correct?
She was a stay-at-home wife, yes.
And she's taking care of your daughter who has developmental delays, is that fair?
We both have.
Well, in fairness, when was the last time you saw your daughter, sir?
It would have been at the start of July, I believe.
Did you have her for any number of hours at that time?
No, ma'am.
Did you purchase her anything when you saw her?
No, ma'am.
Did you give your wife, aside from what the money that you send every month, did you give her anything else since she's been the only one to have the child?
No.
Is it your testimony today that you were so distressed that you posted on Facebook an ominous remark about a goodbye to everybody in Facebook world? Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're so distraught you went to social media to make sure everybody knew that you were saying goodbye.
My friends and family, yes, ma'am.
Are you sure it's not some sort of, Judge, I'll strike that. Now, when you said you were evicted from your house, you weren't evicted, were you?
I was court ordered out of my house, yes.
Okay. And was that because of your extramarital affairs and all the money you were spending on everyone else?
No, ma'am.
It wasn't. So tell me why you were court ordered out of your house, sir.
The judge ordered me out because I could afford a extra place.
And that's the only reason.
In the court hearing, at the end, the judge specifically said that it had nothing to do with anything else.
Now, the court said he wasn't punishing you at the end of the hearing. That was his wording, wasn't it?
Your Honor,
What he is we're talking about?
You, Judge.
They're all quoting me to each other.
I'm quoting you. I've got, it's in the order.
Your Honor, I don't believe that he is qualified to expound upon the legal basis of Your Honor's decision. He's responded with what his recollection was, and I believe that is the conclusion of the question and answer.
Well, I mean, it doesn't appear to me that that's really relevant. I mean, under the circumstances, whatever I said, and he's either complied with my ruling or he hasn't. So.
I can move on, Judge. Now, you've got savings at Bank of America, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
What did you do with your savings that were at Bank of America, sir?
I've done nothing with it.
Okay, you had a large lump sum with bank, you had a large lump sum in savings at your separation. Where's that money gone?
I haven't touched the Bank of America account in over three or 4 years.
Do you have another savings account?
No, ma'am, I don't.
How much was in the Bank of America account at the time of separation?
I don't know.
So if there's $30,000 there for you to live off of, you don't know that it's there?
No, ma'am,
You never allowed Miss Anderson access to that after she found out you were cheating, did you?
that's incorrect.
Let's talk about your car repair bills. You understand during the pendency of this divorce, you're under an injunction not to dissipate any assets. Do you understand that?
Don't know what that means.
You're not allowed to get rid of any assets. Do you understand that?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Okay, so your lawyer didn't show you the injunction?
I wasn't aware of it.
Since the filing of the divorce, you've sold a vehicle, haven't you?
I traded a vehicle in, yes, ma'am.
Okay, which vehicle was that?
It was an Ultima.
Okay, and that was within the marriage, is that correct?
Yes.
And Miss Anderson's name was on that vehicle?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, it was on the loan, wasn't it?
No,
Okay. Did you give her any of the proceeds or offer her any of the proceeds when you traded that vehicle in?
there were no proceeds.
Okay. Was there any amount of money from that vehicle that was applied towards your new vehicle?
I think so, yeah.
How much?
I'm not sure.
Did you offer Miss Anderson any of that money?
No, I wasn't aware of it.
How much did your new car, what did you get in exchange for, was it a 2016 Nissan Altima that you had?
It was a 2015 Ultima I had,
And what did you get in exchange for that?
2017 used Ultima.
So you upgraded, is that a fair statement?
No, ma'am.
You got a newer vehicle, is that correct?
A newer year vehicle, yes, ma'am.
And even without Miss Anderson's permission to do that, you're before this court and expect this court to make you feel some sort of way about the fact that you've incurred $1,500 in expenses for that vehicle that you just bought. Did you have $1,500 in expenses for it?
I do.
Okay. Do you expect the court to give you any sort of leniency because you have a bill that has come about for a vehicle you weren't supposed to get in the first place?
I don't expect anything from anyone.
Your child is developmentally delayed, is that correct?
She has autism.
And she's got ADHD, is that correct?
Yes.
And Miss Anderson has always provided her schooling, is that correct?
No.
Why do you say no?
She has, for the past 3 years since COVID started, assisted Lillian with remote schooling. Before that, Lillian was in physical school.
Okay. And since COVID, because your in-laws were living with you, the child stayed out of school in case she got COVID and brought it home, is that correct?
Your Honor, I think that the form of the question supposes a little too much.
What now?
I think that I'm objecting to the form of the question. She says that the reason that the child was kept home after COVID was because the grandparents were back. I think there's a little too much information in the question.
I mean, he agreed, he said yes.
Your client's already answered the question, so it's apparently not so complex that he couldn't understand and answer it, so
Yes, sir.
overrule the objection.
And during the period of the divorce, you've loaned money to women, your female friends, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How much money is still owed to you?
I'm not sure.
Well, we knew as of the last time we were in court that you had loaned at least $2,500. Was that ever repaid to you?
No.
Have you asked for that money back?
I've not spoken to the person
Why have you not asked for that money back if you're title money?
because I don't want to talk to that person and vice versa.
Is that someone that you had a sexual relationship with, sir?
No.
Who else have you loaned money to?
Nobody else.
Nobody but the one female?
Yes.
How many other females have you been around in a romantic setting?
One other.
One other? Is that the one that you went to Chicago with? Is
No.
that the one that you went to New Orleans with?
Yes.
And to Pensacola? Did she accompany you to Pensacola?
Mm-hmm.
Did you fly or drive?
Drove.
Okay. Did you pay for all the gas?
Yes.
You paid for the lodging?
Yes.
You remember making the comment to Miss Anderson shortly before you made yourself the victim in this case, that if anything ever happened to you, that you'd make sure that everybody knew that Miss Anderson was crazy and you'd have her committed?
No.
Have you ever said anything like that to her?
Not that I'm aware of.
You've never said that she should be committed?
I don't ever remember saying that.
Sir, what kind of degree do you have?
I've got an associate's degree.
And since the entry of the last court order, wherein you were required to pay the $1,200 a month and pay the expenses at the marital residence, you have bought several 3D printers, correct?
No.
You don't have any 3D printers?
I do, yes.
Okay, how many do you have?
I've got the one.
Did you tell Miss Anderson you were going to buy another one?
No.
Now, in 2021, Judge, if I may approach. Do you recall how much you made in 2021, sir?
No, I don't.
Do you recall how much you put on your taxes that you made?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any other income sources other than the 2 jobs that you've indicated to the court?
No, ma'am.
Have you done anything to assist your wife in seeking Social Security for your daughter?
No, ma'am.
You understand your child is eligible for Social Security?
I was told a couple of years ago that she wasn't because I made too much money.
Have you done anything in the recent past to try to assist to get that done?
No.
How much you made in 2021?
$92,091.
$92,091, is that correct?
Mhm.
And in 2022, you made $98,000, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you're telling the court today that you're not capable of making that now?
No, ma'am.
Now, you understand Miss Jackson Smith went through a dialogue of numbers wherein you've spent $60,000 to support your wife over the last 2 years, and you need to have less that you're paying. You recall that testimony?
Yes.
Right now, you're on target to make $60,000 this next year, correct? If we don't do anything with the second job.
Approximately, yes.
You're earning $27.89, I think, per hour, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're working at least 40 hours a week, if not 42 hours a week?
Yes, ma'am.
And you understand that you're only providing a total of what looks like maybe $2,500 a month
Yes, ma'am.
to your wife? And you're saying that you need more to support yourself than your wife needs when she's got your daughter in her care 100% of the time. Are you telling the court that?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that to me, how that is, that you need more money than she needs when she's supporting your daughter?
I have no way to pay everything that I have to pay for myself as well.
Well, you do, because you have for the last 2 years, is that correct?
With a second job, yes.
Okay. And you're still able-bodied, is that fair? I mean, you're up and walking?
Barely.
And when I heard you testify, it sounded to me like it wasn't necessarily a mental health problem that was preventing your second job, employment with your second job. It sounded like there were issues with the job where you were sending capable employees home.
That's incorrect.
Okay. Can you explain to me why your expenses are more than the expenses of your wife?
They're approximately the same, where I can barely provide food for myself and for my cats.
Okay. So barely providing food for yourself costs you $800 a month, sir?
That's,
Is it fair to say you could spend $10 a meal and still eat 3 meals a day on $800 a month?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, close, 2.5 meals. Judge, if I may have 1 minute with my client. Sir, what'd you have for lunch today?
I had some McDonald's,
Okay. What'd you eat?
fries and nuggets.
What'd you have for breakfast?
I didn't have anything for breakfast.
Okay. Could you eat cereal for breakfast?
At this point, I think it's argumentative. He's testified that that's what it costs for him to eat. I think it's
I
up
don't
to your
mind
honor
you
to
doing
decide whether that's pertinent or not.
Yeah, I don't mind to be done.
Sustain the objection.
Mr. Anderson, are you a well man?
I don't know.
Do you feel as well as you did, let's say, back in July of 2021 when all this was ordered?
No.
Do you feel like a man who's going to pick up tomorrow and go on vacation with an attractive young lady?
No.
Do you feel like a man who's capable of working 100 hours a week?
I can barely work a full day now.
Is this something that you're proud of?
No, ma'am.
Are you happy to tell the court all of this?
No, ma'am.
Do you wish that things were different?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you've heard Ms. Duke in so many ways say that you have never cared for your daughter. Is that an accurate statement?
Not even close.
Okay. Tell me what it was like when you were living with your daughter for you and she.
It was great. I loved watching her play. Sometimes she would get on my nerves when she would pace or be noisy, but I miss that very much. She's so smart. She's imaginative. Very proud of her. People use her autism as if it's a crutch for her, and it's not. It's just something that she has, and despite it all, she's the woman she is. I was looking through some photos that I had They're all old ones. I don't have any new ones. When her and I used to lay on the couch together and sleep. She doesn't even want to be around me now. And I get that.
But is that your choice, Mr. Anderson? Do you choose not to be around your daughter?
Right now, at this moment, yes.
And why is that?
Her seeing me like this is not good for her. It's better if she deserves better.
Are you, in your opinion, capable of financially supporting virtually in their entirety 2 separate households?
No.
Okay. Ms. Duke also seemed to imply that Ms. Anderson was the only one caring for your daughter, but don't you think that some of this $2,382.94 a month is going to support your daughter?
Yes.
Okay, and it's keeping a roof over her head?
It's keeping a roof over her head. It allows her to get out in the Jeep if she wants. It gives her food. It gives her access to the internet for her to enjoy stuff. It gives her food and it gives her water and electricity to use for whatever she wants.
If you had the ability, Mr. Anderson, would you continue to provide as you have been for your wife and your daughter?
If I had the ability, yes.
Okay. And it's your testimony here today that you no longer have the ability to support them in this way?
No.
Okay. So what is in the Bank of America account? What is the Bank of America account, rather?
It's a bank account. It's a checking and saving. There's a savings account that was set up for Lillian. When I first started working back in 2008, I opened up the account. I think it was in 2011. Pamela was put on the account, so it's a joint account. She's always had access to it. She's always had a bank card. She's always had online access to it. Whenever I send her the $600 a month, that's where the $600 a month goes. I no longer have a bank card for it because I let it expire. I do not log onto the online portal for it. The savings account is, like I said, was set up for Lillian. And essentially it's called a keep the change savings account. So whatever is spent, it gets rounded up, but that change gets put into that savings account. And I haven't touched either the savings account or the checking account since the start of 2020 when I opened up my own individual account at Regions.
So even though you've made 2 attempts on your life, you've lost a job, you're barely able to feed yourself, you still have not touched that money because it belongs to your daughter.
Yes.
How much money are we talking about?
He's saying approximately $30,000.
No, ma'am, I'm not.
Okay. How much approximately do you think is in the account?
I'm not sure. It's not in the thousands. It's not even in the hundreds or even past $100.
Okay. So you're saying there's less than $100 in this account?
We're talking about the savings account, Mr. Anderson. You know how much is in that savings account?
I don't.
Have you withdrawn any substantial amounts from it?
No, sir, I haven't.
In the last you knew, there was $30,000 in it?
No, sir, I've never said that.
Okay, and I'm asking you, how much do you think is in there? Or how much, strike that, how much was in there the last time you yourself looked?
$13.
$13.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you in a position right now where you think that you could help anybody apply for Social Security? Are you mentally stable enough to do that?
I could help if I knew what I needed to do.
And if you were told what you needed to do and you were able to do that, you'd be happy to, would you not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Has anybody told you anything about Social Security or sent you any paperwork?
No, ma'am.
So all of that is hyperbole.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So to be clear, your old income was $9,303 a month, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Your new income is $5,075.98, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you are currently paying your wife $2,382.94
Yes, ma'am.
while maintaining your own household and your own living expenses.
Yes, ma'am.
And in your opinion, considering your current circumstances, that is impossible to maintain.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So that's a roundup account, correct? The Bank of America? It rounds up if you have $10, if you're close to $10, it rounds it up and puts the extra into that account for Lillian.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how often were you using that card to make sure that extra money went into her account?
Whenever I made a purchase.
Okay. And you're saying that all that was in there and you've not made any withdrawals is $13?
Yes, ma'am. The last time I looked.
The last time you looked and the last time that you took money out of it, right?
The last time, yes.
How much money did you take out of it?
I transferred $30 from the savings account into the checking account, so the checking account wouldn't go into negative funds and receive a $35 negative fee.
So how much did you take before you took that $30? When did you make the big transfer?
I've never made any large transfers.
But you can agree that it was at $1,500 at least at one point in time.
No, ma'am.
And you continue to use the mechanism that adds the change to that account, correct?
I don't know.
Why don't you know, sir?
I do not use the mechanism, no, comma, no.
Okay. Now, in your testimony earlier, you testified that you pay for everything for the wife, but she pays her own utilities, is that correct?
I'm not sure. As far as I was aware, the $1,200 that I was paying, she was using part of that to pay the utilities.
And you're not paying those utilities directly, is what I'm saying. She pays her gas, she pays her water. Do you pay anything utility-wise?
Not directly.
How much is in your current checking and savings accounts?
My current account has approximately $1,400.
$1,400 in your checking?
Yes,
Okay, how much in your savings?
I don't have anything in savings.
Do you have any additional savings or checking accounts anywhere?
No, ma'am.
Okay, is there a reason you've not supplemented to let us know how much was in there?
I don't understand.
I'll strike that, that's fine. It's fair to say that Lillian can't be left alone, isn't it?
I think given enough practice and understanding of responsibility, she could be.
I mean, did you feel comfortable today sending her out of the room on her own?
She would be okay on her own. Out of the room, yes.
What mindset? She's of 8-year-old mindset, is that fair to say?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevance. If this is about caring for the child, certainly anything monetary, I believe that it is relevant, but we're talking about the mindset of the minor child, which I'm not sure is relevant to a motion to modify a pendente light spousal support.
Luke, what is the role?
It is relevant because when we were here on the pendente light matter, Your Honor said on the basis of the $1,200 and the utilities and not utilities, I'm sorry, and the household expenses that you were granting that she was not going to receive a specific amount of child support. So that is the relevance. The child support melds over into the spousal support because in Your Honor's previous ruling, that was all taken into consideration and why child support was not specific.
I think her objection is as to the relevance of the mindset of the child, how that relates to what you're arguing. I'm fully aware of the fact that with the amounts that he was ordered to pay, that child support would have been impossible. The other option is we convert it to child support based on the current income and then determine the amount of applicable support. But I'm of the opinion that I don't see how his opinion about this child's mindset is relevant to this issue.
Her ability to be left home alone and my client's ability to
All right, overruled on the basis that it goes to the issue of whether or not Ms. Anderson can work outside of the home.
the minor child has been determined to be at an 8-year-old's level. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Judge, that's all.
Smith, do you have any follow-up?
No, sir, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. You may sit down, have a seat. Smith, you may call your next witness.
Patty Flores Pugh, she should be out in the hallway, Judge.
Your Honor, while Ms. Pugh's coming in, Mr. Potter and I have the matter that we can take off your docket.
Judge, if she's being offered to testify as to the mental health of Mr. Anderson, I would like to voir dire her because while she's a respected member of the community, I don't believe that she has the credentials to testify about mental health.
Why are you offering this witness?
Your Honor, Ms. Patty Flores Pugh has been seeing my client since approximately 2017. She can testify not only to the fact that he is dealing with severe depression and anxiety, but also to the fact
So you're offering her as an expert witness?
I'm offering her to proffer her testimony that she has been seeing him to treat depression and anxiety. I'm not asking for her
capacity.
as his counselor.
LCSW, Judge. And that is,
And additionally, that they have been regularly providing those services free of charge because he is unable to afford their services. She has also been a part of his team during the 2 suicide attempts for which he was hospitalized. She's also attempting to try and find him a caseworker so that he can survive because his financial situation is such that N simply will not meet. And she is also here to testify that in her professional opinion, working nearly 100 hours a week has taken its toll
no,
upon
Judge, no,
him,
that doesn't come in. I mean, she can't even tell you that.
and that he is too fragile at this point to take a second job.
All right, so you're offering her as an expert witness. I'm going to allow you to attempt to qualify her as an expert witness. But before she is qualified as an expert witness, I'm going to allow Ms. Duke the opportunity to voir dire her before she's rendering any opinion based upon. Ms. Smith will be entitled to follow up with questions of her own.
Ms. Flores Pugh, you are not qualified as a psychiatrist, are you?
Absolutely not.
Or as a psychologist?
No.
Okay, and you cannot give opinions as to mental health diagnoses. You're not qualified to do that, are you?
I'm trying to understand the diagnosis. I'm not qualified to give diagnosis.
Correct. And you're not qualified to give expert testimony with regard to diagnoses, are you?
No, I'm going by anything that I've ever said about a diagnosis would be what the hospital said when they sent release papers to us.
Okay. And there's not a hospital personnel here to do anything about that, is there?
No, there's
Okay.
discharge papers, but
And those discharge papers were not certified to you, were they?
I don't know if they were sent as his release because he was ordered to return. And so they gave diagnosis and all that in those papers.
But as a licensed clinical social worker, you cannot testify as to somebody's mental health. You can testify as to what your counseling has been, but not as to someone's ability to work or their mental health, correct?
I don't know exactly what you're asking. I can talk about emotions.
Okay, but you don't have the qualifications to testify about these mental health diagnoses, do you?
I'm really not understanding the question. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm here to say what I observe, the paperwork that I've gotten, those kinds of things.
Okay, but how would that testimony be any different than what Mr. Anderson could say about himself? If he's gotten up here already and testified about his emotional state?
I'm not sure what he testified to,
Okay.
but I'm sure that he showed he was distraught. And
Okay, but how could your testimony do anything different than what he's already said?
I'm not sure what he said, so sorry.
You're not qualified as an expert in order to testify as to Mr. Anderson's mental health. Is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not trying to be difficult. I am a senior crisis specialist. I've done crisis work all my life. I am trained in assessing suicides and things like that. But no, I cannot diagnose, but I can certainly do the assessments for suicide and that kind of thing.
You can do the assessments, but you cannot diagnose.
Correct.
You cannot discuss someone's progress with their mental health diagnoses. That would be a doctor. Is that correct? A doctor of psychiatry or a doctor of,
To diagnose, correct.
yes, that's all, Judge.
Ms. Flores, if you would please tell us what your qualifications are in the area of counseling.
Well, I've been doing crisis type counseling for 45 plus years. I'm the founder and director of Main Street Interventions. We're state licensed outpatient mental health. We're state licensed outpatient drug and alcohol. We're supervised. We meet all the criteria to hold those standards. And I have been a counselor for many, many years, not an LPC, but I have clients that are. I mean, it's just something that I've done for a very long time.
When you say crisis management, what exactly does that mean?
Well, that I have worked with crisis intervention in very different facets.
Okay, but what does that mean? What would it mean to deal with somebody in crisis intervention?
Well, we have ways that we're able to determine how serious a suicide attempt is. I work with mobile crisis, finding less restrictive alternatives to hospitalization. So assessments, I've always done different types of assessments to the danger assessment for domestic violence and those kinds of things.
And what are your qualifications to make these assessments?
Just a lot of education and a lot of experience, and I've been trained in all those things.
What education and what training specifically?
It would take a long time to really come up with all the specifics, but I've done training for everything that I teach. I've done crisis line training. I've done crisis line teaching. I was with the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center with ongoing training. I don't have a degree. I have a lot of training.
And what are your qualifications?
Experience is the main thing, and I am a senior crisis specialist with suicide prevention, that sort of thing. I've taught at the Vanderbilt College for rape and sexual abuse. I don't have a degree for that, but I have experience and actually train the nurses for that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's just something that I've done along the way.
And what is your educational background?
I just some college here and there, just certifications and things like that. I did not get a degree.
And have you served as Mr. Brett Matthew Anderson's counselor?
Yes,
And how long have you been serving in that capacity?
since September of 2017.
Okay. And when he came to you, what were his concerns?
He was having trouble in his marriage.
This is part of the testimony, Judge. I think first we need to determine whether or not she's a certified expert.
Well, an expert witness under the rules can be qualified as an expert based upon education or experience. And according to this witness, she has been counseling for 17 years or something like that.
21 and a half at Main
21 and a half
Street.
years.
Prior to that, another 10.
So she is qualified to be qualified as a witness as to counseling. And it's my understanding that's what she is doing, is talking about counseling. She is not a medical professional. She is not a psychological or psychiatric professional. So her testimony will be about observations rather than about opinions regarding diagnosis. If that's clear.
Yes, sir,
She
Your Honor.
cannot render an opinion as to his condition or his prognosis or any such thing as that. She can only testify about her interactions with him.
When
She
he-
will be qualified as a counselor rather than an expert medical professional.
When Mr. Anderson came to you, what concerns did he present?
He was married and there was a difficulty in the marriage. He was concerned about things at the time. There might have been some court involvement. I don't remember specifically what that was, but he was trying to fix things with the marriage and trying to figure out his responsibility, those kinds of things. And financial issues were there as well. And he came on a regular basis and just talked about the day-to-day, what was frustrating him, things at work, things in the marriage.
Okay. At that point, would you have judged him to be a risk for suicide?
Not at that time, no.
At some point, did your counseling of him become, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but more intense?
At times, he would seem more
concerned about things. He wasn't feeling secure about things getting better, but those were usually short periods of time. And over time, he became a little bit more not able to believe he could fix things. That things weren't going to get better.
Okay. Did you, as his counselor, indicate any particular stressors that you were concerned about?
Initially, just being more of a communicator, being able to make his feelings known, that kind of things. Relaxation, that was something that came up. Mostly just sort of being a sounding board, giving affirmations, that kind of thing. And as things progressed, he got maybe a little bit more frustrated, a little bit more not believing things would work.
Okay. And you heard when I was making your introduction to the court, I made the comment that, at some point you started treating him without charge. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
At what point did that start?
I would say that was probably 2018, 19, somewhere for a period of time. And for a period of time, he didn't come. He didn't keep like regular weekly appointments, but he did come semi-regular, and I did not charge because that was the reason that he wasn't coming, and I felt he very much did need.
Okay, you say he very much needed counseling. Why was that your opinion?
He just, at the time, didn't really have anybody that he confided in, could talk things through, and just talking it out helped him a lot, just being able to get it out.
At some point, the stress for Mr. Anderson became untenable. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
And at what point in your profession, in your opinion as his counselor, did he reach that point?
Well, I had not seen him for a while. I can't exactly say how long. And we got, I think he did call to make an appointment, and I saw him one time, and he was very not okay. But it was just a very quick time that I saw him. It wasn't like scheduled in advance. And then we got discharge papers from the hospital where he had attempted suicide.
Okay. When you say he came in and he was very not okay, I do something completely different for a living than you do. So what does that mean to you, and specifically as it relates to Mr. Anderson?
Just all of his statements were what I call just based on hopelessness. It's just not going to get any better. I just don't know what else to do. And we did a suicide contract at the time that he would call if he made any other, before he made any other attempts. And he came regular after that for a short time, and then another suicide.
So while he was under your care, he attempted suicide twice?
No, the first, well, he wasn't seeing me when he had the first one.
Mhm.
But then the second one he had been. And we did have a contract for him to call if he did. And he did call, but after he'd already taken the pills.
When was the last time you saw Mr. Anderson in your professional capacity?
It would have been last week, I think, when he came after he got out of the hospital.
Okay, and how would you characterize his emotional and mental state?
The best word that I can give is just fragile. His demeanor it's gone downhill. He moves his hands a lot. He's just very different. I mean, he's agitated. He's hopeless. He does not indicate any kind of hope for anything being better, anything improving. He cannot do anything he really needs to do, those kinds of things.
In accordance with your experience in crisis situations, how do these observations correlate with that training? Do you have concerns?
Oh, I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned.
Could you explain that to the judge, please, ma'am?
Well, my belief is that he's absolutely positively at the end of his rope, and that he absolutely cannot do any more than he's doing, can't even do what he is doing. He's not mentally or physically capable of doing that, in my opinion.
Okay, and to be clear, you're here today and have been here all day, also free of charge.
Yes,
And you did that out of an abundance of concern specifically for Mr. Anderson?
very much so.
And could you explain that to the judge, please?
Well, I just believe, my interactions with him, he has always tried to do the right thing, in my opinion, in my eyes. He's worked very, very hard and happy to do it. And I've just seen that just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And I know I know his finances, and it's just not possible. And that's what has him mostly defeated.
And as his counselor, would it be fair to say that you're worried about him,
Very worried.
particularly if nothing changes?
Absolutely, if nothing changes. If nothing changes, the contract is not going to even help.
His suicide contract is. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness. If you would stay put, please. Ms. Duke will ask you some questions.
Are you aware that as of July the 28th, when Mr. Anderson signed his statement of income and expenses, that he disclosed $80 per month in counseling expenses?
I didn't read that. I don't remember.
Okay. Are you his only counselor that you know of?
As far as I know, yes. And when he first came this last time, he probably did pay for the first couple of sessions. He's not paying now.
Now, you had a discussion prior to the divorce proceedings beginning with Ms. Anderson regarding the fact that you believed that Mr. Anderson had abused her financially and mentally. Do you recall that conversation?
That I had a conversation with who?
With Ms. Anderson, and told her that you believed that Mr. Anderson had been financially and emotionally abusing her.
No. She could have seen somebody at Main Street, but no.
Okay. Do you, in your counseling sessions with Mr. Anderson, where he discloses all of these concerns about his finances, has he ever reported to you the multiple vacations he's been on with women, that he's paid for their vacation when he's been with them?
I've been aware sometimes of travel, but
The other stuff, not necessarily.
But in your mind as a counselor, do you worry about how much a client may be doing to try to get things by you when their issues are financial, but they're spending additional monies but not disclosing the additional monies to you?
I have no idea. I mean, people disclose what they disclose. We've not always talked about how much he makes and how much is, that's a new thing.
Okay. But as a counselor, would you advise him that, hey, if you're worried about your finances, then why are you taking trips and putting the bills for the trips that your girlfriends are going on with you?
Well, I'm
Your
not
Honor,
aware.
I don't believe that
If that were
Ms. Duke is a counseling professional, and I don't know why she's
I can ask how-
proffering advice. I don't know
What
what.
are you, you're standing up, but what are you exactly saying?
My objection is relevance and pertinence, Your Honor. She's asking a professional whether she gave professional advice. I mean,
I can
is she really
reword that.
asking her if she gave financial planning advice? I don't think that that's why she's here.
Right, well, rather than rule on your objection, Ms. Duke has indicated that she's going to reword the question, so reword the question.
If Mr. Anderson, which you said he came to you and he's stressed out about his finances, correct?
That's not the only reason, but at times he was stressed about finances,
Okay.
yes.
And if Mr. Anderson today in this court testified to going on multiple vacations with women and paying for their bill when they were with him, would you advise him that if that's a stressor in your life, you don't need to do that?
Again, Your Honor, we're rephrasing a question. I don't know what relevance his counselor's financial advice would have.
She opened the door by saying that she said that one of his stressors is finances.
Overruled, I think that Ms. Duke is correct. Witnesses testified that Mr. Anderson's stressors include money, so this is a fair question.
Did you advise him that he needs to not be taking those trips if finances are his issue?
I never was told that, so I never would have had any reason to comment on that.
Okay. Well, now that you're being told that he testified to taking multiple trips with other women that he footed the bill for while he's in counseling with you, complaining about his finances, how would you advise him?
Well, if I saw anywhere that he was spending money he didn't need to spend, I'm sure I would point it out, yes.
Okay. And he's told you, he doesn't tell you about his, necessarily what he makes on his pay stub or anything like that, but he's told you his financial stressors come from Ms. Anderson. Is that correct?
All along, he just talked about how much this, that, and the other cost, different things that were coming up, money that was going out, what he just wasn't, he was working a second job, he had to work a third job, those kinds of things would come up. But I never got any financial information about how much he made or how much he spent, just what he was concerned about.
But in those disclosures to you, he never disclosed multiple trips with girlfriends, did he?
Correct. And I don't know if when that happened, if he was seeing me during those times or not.
And you said a third job. So has he had a third job that he hasn't disclosed to this court?
Not at this time.
Okay, but he did have a third job previously. Is that correct?
It seemed like one time he was working two different things and driving to Nashville every day, carrying people, but that's a long time ago.
And everything that you've heard from him or from the hospital has been self-reported by him. Is that correct?
Or the discharge papers.
Okay. But he hasn't come before this court today with a psychological assessment or anything like that for you to review.
No, I did talk to the psychiatrist that had him admitted, and
But you do
that's
not-
documented.
But you do not have a report here with you today, do you? And you couldn't testify to that if you.
I have the report, but I don't have it with me now.
Have you asked Mr. Anderson whether or not he is self-medicating and that's some of the source of his strain?
I know that he's on medication. I'm not aware of self-medicating.
Okay. Would that play a role in what's going on with him potentially? If he were abusing a drug, narcotic,
Your Honor,
alcohol?
I'm going to object to the hypothetical. She's already said that this individual is not a medical professional. Now she's asking them to hypothesize about the possibility of something she's already testified she has no knowledge of and what its possible
Saying that
medical
without
effect is.
venturing into a professional medical or psychiatric or psychological opinion, so I sustain the objection.
Have you asked him whether he's been using drugs or alcohol?
I don't think that question has come up. Medication has.
And to the best of your knowledge, were the slit wrists, were those superficial wounds on him? Have you looked at his wrists?
Not really. I mean, he indicated it, but I don't believe it was a slit wrist.
It wasn't serious, was it?
No,
Well,
he was,
just the
he
first
was
he's
Asking this
hospitalized.
individual to render a medical opinion. Was the injury serious? She went to great lengths to ensure that this individual was not qualified as a medical professional, so I'm going to.
Question is, are you asking?
I can strike it. I don't want to strike it.
Question strike.
How many times between the first hospital stay and the second hospital stay did you see him?
I have a really busy schedule. I'm going to say 3 times at the most, maybe only twice. It wasn't long.
When someone has threatened to commit suicide or has attempted suicide, wouldn't you generally see them more than that?
It was set up for once a week. It just wasn't that much time between the first time and the second time.
But wouldn't you see them more than once a week generally?
It just depends on what they're willing to do at the time and what they're able to do. For what it's worth, he would have qualified to have come more than once a week, but he wasn't able to do it.
Okay. And are you aware that since his initial hospital stay that he has continued to work 84 hours every 2 weeks?
No, I'm not aware. I know that he did go back to work from home. He wasn't able to go in for quite a bit of time.
But he's going in now, is that correct?
I don't really know. I know that was the intent. After so much time after the hospital, he was able to go back, and they were going to allow him to do that at home initially.
That's all, Judge.
Redirect.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Ms. Flores-Pugh, Ms. Duke seems to be implying that underneath this fragile, broken exterior is some international man of leisure,
Objection to her commentary, Judge.
Sustained.
implying that he is flitting off with women and footing the
Objection
expenses.
to the commentary, that's not proper.
Sustained. Commentary is not proper. I think you can ask the question in a different form, but it is inappropriate to characterize it in such fashion.
She seems to imply that he has so few cares in the world that he is taking vacations with individuals other than his wife and footing the bill. In other words, leading this leisurely life. Is that your impression as his counselor?
No.
Okay. Does Mr. Anderson have some very serious issues in your opinion?
Yes.
Issues that are currently being exacerbated by some of the orders of this court?
Yes.
Okay. Are you professionally concerned for him?
Very much so.
If you would please explain to the judge once more that if you do not believe that Mr. Anderson is prevaricating, if you do not believe that Mr. Anderson is making this up to get out of a debt, would you please explain to the judge why that is, what the basis of that opinion is?
In short, over the time that I have known him, he can make eye contact and have a conversation. He's barely able to do that now. And he just can barely see the positive side of anything. He literally feels like if he does kill himself, nobody's going to care. And that he's just not able to do what he has to do. He's defeated. And like I say, the best word I can say is fragile. Now, all the other stuff may or may not be, but he is fragile now. Period. And he's just not going to make it if he's not able to see some light at the end of the tunnel that's not a train.
Thank you.
Ms. Duke?
Nothing
Thank
else.
you, ma'am. You can stand down. We are going to be in recess for the afternoon recess. Probably be about 15 minutes, but I need to send you. Mark, this is exhibit, please. I think so.
We are going to stipulate that the mother's position is, this is a, give me just one second.
You're gonna what?
I'm going to call my client.
You raise your right hand and be placed under oath, please.
And Ms. Anderson, I provided the court with an affidavit of income and property. Is this a copy of that?
Yes, ma'am, you just showed me that, yes.
Okay. Are those the expenses in your household?
Yes,
Okay. And are some of those expenses currently paid by your husband?
some of them, yes.
Okay. Are you currently paying your utilities and what are you paying?
I pay for the utilities. I pay for some of the streaming services that Lillian and I both use, that Brett does not use. That I pay for her Fitbit. She just got that and she really likes that, so I pay for that. And I have medical bills that I'm paying down.
Okay. And how much are your medical bills?
My medical bills since the fibroids, the cysts, have ballooned to just over $5,000.
When you heard Mr. Anderson say that you didn't have any health concerns, was that accurate?
No,
What are your health concerns, please?
I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. I fought tooth and nail to have Lillian. She's my blessing. I have fibromyalgia, which is I'm not able to treat because of my high blood pressure and other concerns with the medication that is currently recommended. I have both generalized anxiety disorder as well as depression, and I'm being treated for that.
And did you have all these at the time that this last court order went down?
Yes,
Based on your observations of, sorry, let me strike that. Has Mr. Anderson made threats like this in the past?
yes,
And has he made threats like this in the past to get out of obligations?
yes,
Threats like what?
Threats against his life to get out of obligations?
yes,
Now, Ms. Flores-Pugh was here earlier.
yes,
She testified.
yes,
Has she told you in the past that he's been financially and emotionally abusive?
yes,
Now, the two of you had a Bank of America account,
yes,
is that correct? And it had a significant amount of money in it.
yes. To me, it was a significant amount of money.
And that account continued to grow after your separation from him.
Yes,
Were you allowed access to that account without permission from Mr. Anderson?
no,
Did he let you spend any money without permission from him?
no,
Okay. Has he been controlling for the entirety of the marriage over finances?
yes,
And is this veiled attempt at his life, have you seen this before?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the form of the question. A veiled attempt that landed him in the hospital twice, I don't believe is a veiled attempt.
So essentially, you're objecting to the commentary of her question on the same basis that she objected to your commentary. Is that
Very similarly, Your Honor.
any objection?
Was he successful in his attempt at his life?
no,
And has he not been successful on other occasions?
yes,
You heard him testify that he hadn't made large purchases like the 3D printer and things like that. Has he made purchases of 3D printers?
yes.
And how do you know that?
Because he told me he was getting the second job so he could do more 3D printing as a quote unquote side hustle to make figurines and sell them.
And your daughter even has one of those figurines, doesn't she?
Yes,
And to your knowledge, he's doing that.
As far as I know, yes. The last time I was at his residence, they were on the floor in the living room.
Have you been the sole provider and caregiver for your minor child, providing direct care for your child for how long? How long have you been the sole provider?
Her entire life.
Since all of this started, how often has Mr. Anderson seen this child?
Maybe once a week for a few hours.
At any point in time, has he purchased her any clothing during those hours?
Yes, he did.
Okay, when was that?
About 6 months ago.
In the recent past, how often has he seen her? In the last 3 weeks?
He saw her once because she wanted to go see the kittens. I let her go see the kittens and then brought her home. And then she's seen him just to give hugs when he wanted me to come and pick up her clothes because she was going to grow out of them if she didn't wear them.
So she doesn't have any clothing at his house right now?
Your Honor, there is an agreed order in the file that says that we have agreed, because of the hospitalization, to limit contact to video and phone. So unless there is some specification of time parameters here, I believe it's irrelevant.
If the court has to calculate child support today based on the amounts of earning, you have to hear that he's not visiting with the minor child. If she's stipulating that his days are 0, then that's fine.
Well, the fact of the matter is that she just testified that he's not been visiting except for a couple of hours, so that doesn't constitute an overnight for which he would be entitled to credit. So I think it's time to move on. Move on, please.
Is your minor child able to be left at home by herself?
No, she's an elopement risk.
And are you having to care for her at
Yes.
home right now? Are you doing her education at home?
She has a program that's certified through the Dixon County School of Education that she gets course studies through the school in her IEP for only the ones that she is deficit in, which was her math. But now she's even come up to that. She takes online courses, of which I help her with those. I am not qualified to be a teacher. I know that. I am not qualified. I am qualified according to my classes and my education to be an assistant. They've even asked me to apply with the board to be one, but I can't. If Lillian can't go back into a schoolroom, which she hasn't been able to since COVID and then the shootings in Uvalde and in Nashville, she can't go back in.
Does she have, part of her autism, does she have experiences where she's explosive in nature?
Yes.
Okay.
She had an escalation this morning when we were told that Lillian couldn't bring her devices in with us, which is a coping mechanism for her. It is a comfort item. I told her that we would come in and ask the judge and ask you if she could bring them in. And when we were allowed to go outside and sit in the Jeep until we came back in, it was fine. And then I got an email with your questions and she saw me answering them and she saw your name and she started putting her tablet away because she didn't think she could bring it. And she began to have an escalation. And then we had to sit there 14 minutes, me telling her cookie and candle. Smell the cookie, blow the candle.
Some exercises that she's been taught to get through those emotions.
Yes, to self-regulate. She's very good at self-regulating most of the time.
Did he ask you to sell the vehicle?
No.
Did he give you any proceeds from the vehicle?
No.
Did he give you a difficult time about tax return and tax money?
Yes.
Is he, based on your experience with him and his past actions to try to get out of obligations, is Mr. Anderson doing the same things now that he was doing at the beginning of the divorce?
Yes.
That's all, Judge.
Ross?
Did Mr. Anderson attempt suicide at the beginning of this divorce?
Mr. Anderson attempts a lot of things.
Just answer my question.
I don't know.
You said that he does this to get out of things, and Ms. Duke specifically referenced the divorce proceedings. So when you initiated these divorce proceedings, did he attempt suicide?
No, he attempted to harass me physically.
Okay, I need you to just try and answer my questions, Ms. Anderson.
said no, he just attempted to harass me.
Well, the question was, did he attempt suicide? Her answer was no, but then she offered a different response, which was not responsive to the question. Sustained overrule the objection.
So when did he attempt suicide?
As far as I knew, he attempted it while we were away at a religious festival, and that was the only one I knew about.
And what was that date?
And that was the 5th of June.
Okay, of this year?
Yes.
And when did this divorce start?
It's been over 3 years.
So he's been hanging in there for nearly 3 years. Is that fair?
I would assume so. He was,
Has he ever missed a payment to you? Ever?
actually, yes, he had.
When?
And I had to remind him of it.
When?
I believe I sent notes to Hillary about that. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Did he pay it?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so he has made every payment to you that has been due since this court order.
Yes, he has.
Okay, without exception.
What did I just say? I just said that I had to remind him. And I've had to do that on several occasions. So that is the exception.
But he made the payment, correct, Ms. Anderson?
Ma'am, yes, but I thought the court ordered him to pay those. I shouldn't have to remind him.
So he has paid you in excess of $60,000 so far. Is that correct?
In 3 years, yes.
And
How much has he made in 3 years?
Ms.
ma'am?
Anderson, this is not the time for you to ask me questions.
Okay,
Okay? So he has paid you over $60,000 in the past 3 years, correct?
that's correct.
And it is your testimony that you have done absolutely nothing to engage yourself in any kind of gainful employment in that period of time, correct?
That's incorrect.
Okay.
I'm
Where,
a full-time caregiver.
where have you applied for gainful employment, Ms. Anderson?
Are you going to continue what he did?
Ms. Anderson, I'm asking you questions. Would you please answer them?
I have not, because I've been a caregiver for both my parents and my child, who is a gift.
So since the beginning of this divorce, you have not applied at a single place for any form of
Asked
employment.
and answered. She has answered that. She said no, Judge.
She keeps saying she's a caregiver, Judge. I just want an answer.
No, she said she has not.
Okay.
She gave you her additional reasons why she hasn't, but she's answered the question.
Have you ever had a job the entire time you've been married?
Yes,
Where did you work?
I worked for Express Employment as an assistant, as a substitute teacher. I always went to Lillian's schools so that I could be there if she had an escalation.
And how
Because other
often-
times,
And how often did you work in these
Finish,
jobs?
Judge, and not be
I'm trying to
interrupted.
answer your question, and I think that she's entitled to finish her answer. She's saying yes.
the reason for that is that because every other time when I would get to the point of a job or apply for a job and explain that I had a child, that I was required to go at a moment's notice if she had an escalation that the school was unable to handle, then I was either passed over or fired.
And you are so confident of that, you never applied for another single job.
Not after I stopped doing as a substitute teacher, no.
Are you aware that you can be gainfully employed inside your household, as Mr. Anderson is?
That would be really nice. See, I don't have a desktop computer that either the company paid for or that I spent close to $2,000 to purchase.
Okay, how much do you spend on streaming services a month?
Right now, $25.
Okay, and have you looked for a computer so that you can look for gainful employment inside your house?
Actually, I have, ma'am.
Okay, where have you shopped for a computer so that you can get a job?
Best Buy.
Okay, have you looked anywhere else?
Actually, I looked at Walmart too.
Okay, it says here you pay $150 a month on your credit card bill. How have you racked up a credit card bill if Mr. Anderson is paying for everything but your utilities?
Because he told Lillian the very December that he was required to move out by the court, that he could not provide her with a Christmas that year. And I misspent, got a credit card that has a balance of $600, and I have to pay on it. I have not paid on it in the past, and I'm trying to do better.
So you spent beyond your means and you're using the money that Mr. Anderson is giving you as an order of this court to cover your
Actually, I'm not.
ill-spent Christmas.
Actually, I'm not. The money that I'm spending on that has been gifts from family. and
Wonderful.
friends.
How much is your family giving you a month?
Objection to the commentary, Judge.
My family gives me money when I don't have a bill.
Ma'am, there's an objection if you'll let me finish.
Objection to the commentary. She's yelled at wonderful at her. That's not necessary.
Saying don't make commentary and just ask the questions, Ms. Smith.
How often does your family give you money in addition to the $2,500 that Mr. Anderson does a month?
Every time I have a bill, I can't pay.
So-
If they have the ability.
Okay.
Otherwise, it gets left.
So you've had a $500 bill since December of 2022 that you have paid so little on that it now costs you $150 a month?
Yes, actually, because I'm only paying the very minimum.
You say that you are the sole provider in your household, is that correct?
I'm the sole caregiver in my household, yes.
The question that was asked was provider. I specifically made a note of that. Are you in fact the sole provider in your
That's not
household?
accurate. I actually qualified that after I said it initially, and I said caregiver. I said sole caregiver / provider.
What is your question?
I'm asking if she's the sole provider in her household, Your Honor.
We'll ask that question about characterizing it as a caregiver player. In other words, if you're asking whether or not she considers herself to be the sole provider, then that's a fair question.
Are you the sole provider in your household?
I'm not.
Okay, who else provides to your household?
My now estranged husband pays me $600 on the 15th and the 1st to help care for our child.
And he continues to pay your mortgage, correct?
Yes,
In a house that he doesn't live in,
that's correct.
okay? And he also pays your car bill, correct? Your car payment?
Yes.
Um,
A vehicle, by the way, that he purchased, I had one already paid for, and he decided we needed to get
Ms.
another
Anderson,
one.
we can be here all day, or you can just answer the
If she would
questions.
not interrupt her, she's answering the question and she doesn't like the answer, so she's interrupting her.
I want to finish the question, the answer.
So he's paying your mortgage, $743.89 a month, correct?
Yes,
He is paying your car loan, the vehicle that you drive, $333.24 a month, correct?
yes,
He's also paying $105.81 a month towards your internet,
yes,
okay? And he's also providing you with his Netflix account, is that correct?
yes.
And the only thing that you have to pay for outside of this credit card debt you've racked up are streaming services that your daughter likes, her Fitbit, and $5,000 of medical expenses.
No, actually, there's more. There's the debt that was left over by my mother's caregiver
Okay,
on her
could
death.
you show me where that is on your affidavit of income and property that you signed and submitted to this court as evidence under oath?
That's because I'm paying on it. It's not my debt, but I still have to pay it.
So you are using the financial support that this court has ordered Mr. Anderson to provide for you and your daughter to pay your deceased parents' medical bills?
It's one of my bills, yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, that money's not coming from any source other than Mr. Anderson?
Oh.
Okay. And how much how much did they owe upon their deaths to whatever healthcare providers?
$2,600.
So $2,600 plus the $500 on the internet. Are there any other expenses that you have that are not necessary to your household that Mr. Anderson is covering?
No.
And how do you know what Mr. Anderson does for a living?
Because he's doing the same thing, and he always wears his uniform in front of me.
How often do you see Mr. Anderson?
Every time he picks up Lillian on Saturdays, when he used to, he would come immediately after work.
So you saw him often enough at some point that you were comfortable saying that you knew what he did for a living. Do you know what he does now?
No.
Okay, so to say that he has a side hustle, your words, not mine, making figurines, that's just a guess, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. I would suppose you could characterize it as.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Over the last 2 years, your husband's earned $190,000. Is that right?
Yes.
And they're making a big deal of him giving you $30,000 each year, which he was court ordered to do.
Yes.
And is that approximately a little less than a third of his income?
Yes.
And you understand that he's on target to make $60,000 to $65,000 this year, is that right?
I am now.
Your Honor, this is cumulative.
Has been pretty well established. Sustain the objection.
That's all then.
Let me ask you a question. I know that you feel like you can't take your daughter to regular school for the reasons that you've stated, and that she is necessarily going to have to be in your presence, or that you're going to need to be at home with her. There are a lot of jobs that are available to people who've been working from home. And have you checked into any of those kinds of employment?
Actually, I have.
And
Yes.
what have you found when you checked into those employments?
Most of them are call center jobs that require not only key counters so that they can log how much time I've been on, and also they record what I would be saying. So if I have to get up and be away for some reason with Lillian, then they have told me that I would either be released from my job during the probation, or that I would be just not offered the job to begin with.
Well, you understand, and I know you don't think that Mr. Anderson's efforts at ending his life were necessarily legitimate, but have you considered what will happen to you and your daughter if in fact he's successful the next time he tries?
If he does,
He doesn't have life insurance, I assume, does he?
yes, he does.
He does have life insurance.
Yes,
All right.
which you ordered him to pay.
Okay. So have you thought about what will happen if his situation and stress level is as even remotely serious enough to cause him to attempt his life? My concern would be what would happen to you and your daughter at that point.
I have very few direct family members left. 9 chances out of 10, I would have to sell the home we're in that she loves and is her rock. And we would either have to find something not fit, or I would have to prevail on another family member again. There is only that and her. And if something were to happen to me, they're her godparents, and that's it.
So you understand he's paying some $2,400 a month right now that benefits you and your daughter, correct?
Yes,
And if he's absent from that, then that $2,400 would essentially fall to you to have to come up with.
yes.
All right. Thank you. You can step down. I'll hear you an argument.
Judge, at its simplest, this is a math equation. He was making $9,000, now he makes $5,000. It's a deficit of $4,000 since the court's order. He is currently paying $1,200 in support, plus essentially another $1,200 in these regularly covered household expenses. Judge, he can't keep doing it. He can't. Not only is he not financially equipped to, but you've heard his testimony and the testimony of his counselor, which has been unrefuted, which is that these circumstances, the financial stressors in particular, have already caused him to make 2 attempts on his life. The testimony of his counselor, Your Honor, which again was unsolicited, uncompensated. She was only here of her own volition to testify on Mr. Anderson's behalf. She is trained particularly well in areas of crisis. And she told Your Honor today under oath with almost 40 years of experience that Mr. Anderson is in danger. I understand that this court is not equipped, nor does it have the responsibility to reverse any of the psychological effects that these proceedings or any other have on any litigants. But I do believe that it is my responsibility, not only as Mr. Anderson's attorney, but as an officer of this court, to let Your Honor know that this man is at a tipping point, one might argue, past breaking point. He wants to provide for his family. He specifically wants to provide for his daughter. But we have a situation where we have one spouse that for whatever, the reasons that she's expounded to the court, you can give whatever weight to those you deem appropriate. She is able to work. She isn't. Mr. Anderson has worked to the point where he is essentially broken. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to it before then, but that's where we are, Judge. He cannot work any more than he is already working. I do believe that his emotional well-being at a minimum, and perhaps his life, may even be at risk. Judge, we are asking that you modify your award of support. We have not included an amount in our pleadings. Mr. Anderson has testified that he would be able to shoulder approximately half of what he was paying, which would be, I've calculated it at $2,382.94 a month. We are not asking that you relieve Mr. Anderson of his responsibility to care for his family, particularly his child. But
So that I'm clear, and perhaps I'm misunderstanding, you're asking to reduce that $2,380 whatever dollars by half.
that is what Mr. Anderson has testified that he is able to pay, Your Honor. So that would be our prayer to the court. Judge, we use all different kinds of expressions in the court, but there simply is no more blood to be taken out of the stone, and the next drop of blood may very well, in fact, be his last. So, Your Honor, thank you for your time, attention, and patience.
Stu?
Judge, respectfully, it is difficult to argue when there is absolutely a life at stake, and I take that as seriously as the next person. I absolutely take that seriously. But we have a gentleman before this court today who, I think, in observing him, has acted one way when he's on the witness stand and acted another way when he's sitting at counsel table. He has testified today
You have to
that,
testify?
what now?
Have you ever had to testify?
I have.
I have too. It's not a very pleasant experience, is it? Not for me, it was. Anyway, it was in federal court in front of Judge Higgins, and it was not very pleasant with me when I was testifying. So my point of that is that testifying oftentimes brings stress to people that sitting at a counsel table does not. But I take your meaning of your arguments.
I'm just saying his demeanor, as far as victimization, was much different between the chair up here and counsel table. So I would put before the court that he's testified that he can't work more than a day at a time, he can't do more than 40 hours, but he testified that he was working 84 hours every 2 weeks right now. I mean, he's even working more time than he says he can work right now. He's paid at $27.89 per hour. He's earning overtime. So if we calculate that up, Judge, what we're looking at is income for him at around $65,000 a year. I don't think it's unreasonable for the court to split that money in half when the mother is paying for another mouth in her home to feed. The father has no other persons with whom are dependent on him except for these women he keeps bringing in and out, his candor before the court was not good. He told me that it wasn't his girlfriend, but it was just a friend, but he paid for all the expenses. That doesn't show me somebody that's so stressed out at finances that he's tried to commit suicide. I take suicide very seriously, but unfortunately, I think he's trying to use this in a way to financially abuse my client. Now, could my client work? I think if she could find a good job to work, but based on her caregiving of the minor child, she would have to be able to drop everything in order to go de-escalate the child at school. And the husband put that on her throughout the entire marriage, put that on her. Additionally, an at-home job that would require any kind of contact via the telephone based on the child's escalations and outbursts, I don't know that that's possible. If she had some kind of data entry, maybe, but those jobs are very difficult to find. At this point in time, I'm just asking for the court to continue to have the father pay what he's paying. He's capable of paying that. He's making $65,000 a year, but complaining that $30,000 of that should not go to his wife. He made $190,000 over the last 2 years and has nothing to show for it. We don't know where the Bank of America money went to. I would submit to the court that he was not honest in his testimony regarding the Bank of America money. At this point in time, we're just asking for things to stay the same since she's the primary caregiver for this child and he's not seeing the child at all for purposes of days on the calendar.
Judge, not in closing, but simply because I haven't made any reference to it yet, I do have a motion to set mediation. I would ask that the court set a reasonable time limit for us to get in and get that done. And I also have a motion to compel. I did not attach any separate communication between myself and opposing counsel, as we have not received any response. So there was nothing really to parse hairs over what was responded to and what wasn't.
Regarding the motion to set mediation, my client simply can't afford it.
Mediation is going to be waived simply because of the fact that clearly these folks don't have the money to be paying for mediation in that situation. So,
And
I would assume your lawyers can negotiate the same as if you were going through a mediation. So
I don't know, Dora's pretty good. Dora Salinas is a really good mediator. I think she's
maybe she will
probably
do it pro
much
bono.
better than we are. She might. And then what was your?
Discovery.
Oh, discovery, Judge. I have received the discovery from Ms. Anderson. That is all on my shoulders at this point, simply because I have been in court day after day. I've got 359 emails, unfortunately, that I haven't even gotten to. So it is on my shoulders. I am working on that, and I could probably get those to her in the next 30 days.
All right, let's get those resolved in the next 30 days. This is a temporary hearing because your case has been pending since June of 2021. So it's now over 2 years old. It's been pending, and this is dealing with a temporary order that was entered back over a year and a half ago. Problem that you two have is that you had one set of income during your marriage, that being Mr. Anderson's income, that supported one household and the three people in that household. Now we have one set of income that is being stretched across two households, and unfortunately, that's what the court is required to try to look at. Your standard of living is going to suffer, period, exclamation point, whether it's his fault, your fault, or whatever. It is going to change in a long-term situation. You're not going to be able to maintain the same lifestyle when you were going through a divorce. And Ms. Anderson, of course, filed this divorce, seeking a divorce from her husband. So she may have obviously have had grounds, but it is a situation where, unfortunately, I'm required to now look to see what can be done about these economic situations. There was a temporary order that was issued by this court based upon the facts that were present at the original hearing. If this had been a final order of the court, then there would have been a requirement of showing that there was a material change of circumstances in some fashion, or that there had been a change sufficient to allow the court to consider such a modification. Temporary orders are not quite as stringent, and it requires the court to make a determination of what the present facts are. Mr. Anderson was employed at two jobs, making some $90,000 a year before. He's not making that now. It's just that simple. He has obviously some sort of issues going on. I'm not crediting that what Ms. Duke argues about them being essentially a falsification or a faking of what the situation is, that she takes seriously the suicide, so does the court. But clearly, Mr. Anderson, while complaining of the stress, also has lived a life of someone who, not many people who are in severe economic detriment take the number of vacations that he has. It's difficult for me to even get away to take a vacation, much less 2 or 3 trips over the course of a year's time. I think it is significant that he has taken a number of vacations, and he has loaned money to his paramour or to his girlfriend or whatever that status of that individual was, and hasn't been repaid. But the facts of the matter is that Mr. Anderson owes an obligation to his wife as well as to his daughter that the court recognizes and set in its original hearing. When you have a child, you don't always suspect that you're going to have to care for the child for the rest of your life, but sometimes fate gets in the way, and under these circumstances, it very likely may be a situation where Mr. Anderson may be required to pay child support for this child for quite some time to come, simply because of her autism. She may be, even as an adult, entitled to some sort of statutory support that the law allows for that. The spousal support aspect of this case has to do with the $1,200 a month that Mr. Anderson has been paying his wife. That was what the court said as spousal support. The rest of that, which was approximately some $1,200 in expenses, were expenses, for example, on the mortgage, which theoretically Mr. Anderson reaps the benefit of creating equity in his home, so that the final hearing, when the home is sold, which likely may have to be done, he may reap a benefit from that. And as a result of that, I felt that at the time it was fair and equitable to require him to continue paying the mortgage, because he was increasing the equity on his own behalf, and that remains the same. These other bills that have been talked about, some of these expenses, these folks are just going to have to learn to live with less. Unfortunately, Mr. Anderson worked hard to try to pay for all of these things and not been able to continue to do that. And I find that proof is that he's not able to continue working 2 jobs in the present situation he's in. And as a result of that, it is this court's opinion that the spousal support portion of this case should be reduced to $600 a month instead of $1,200 per month, but that the remaining portions of that order shall remain in full force and effect. He will continue paying the mortgage and the other expenses that he's been paying aside from that, which are her car note and her the mortgage on the house. And I do that because, again, as I point out, he is showing that he's reaping the benefit of increasing the equity in the house that may come back to reward him at the ultimate division of property. Second, the review of his income and expense statement indicates that there are other general expenses he has, which are $800 and just general expenses, but not detailed, unless I've misread that, and food of $802 a month. So I think it's under the circumstances, the best I can do for him at this point is reduce his spousal support obligation to $600 per month, and that will continue until the final hearing of this case. These parties need to get their case ready for a final hearing and either resolve it by agreement or have a hearing if necessary. That's the judgment of the court.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll draw the order.